The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. And if you have questions tonight, which I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of questions tonight, you can private chat them to either H. Foister or Ceiling Cat, and we will get those answered for you as soon as possible. And if you're listening from somewhere else other than here in the chat room and you have questions, you can send it to theparanormalview@gmail.com, and we will get those answered also. Tonight, we've got a great guest lined up, and we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everybody.
And we have Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And I am going to really try and promise that we're not going to have a mishap this week like we had last week. I have everything reconfigured where nothing will be in my way if I have to get up.
And you can't even blame me. I was disconnected at that point during that. I came back. I'm like, what has hit the fan here?
Tim, table tipping.
So, I guess, Barbara, because we do have a great guest, do you have her bio?
No, but I know Jeff does.
Jeff, you got her bio?
Really.
All right. Would you like to introduce our guest then?
Absolutely. I don't know where that came from. So anyway, let's get up here. So tonight's returning guest is psychic medium Gypsy Moon. In her young childhood over various domiciles, she's experienced astral projection, came into contact with a solid apparition. She's lived on a Wisconsin on a haunted farm with very many different friendly good spirits with whom she enjoyed interacting. Gypsy found herself giving readings in everyday conversations, providing spiritual understanding and advice. As a spirit medium and paranormal investigator, Gypsy Moon participates in paranormal events nationwide as a guest speaker, and paranormal investigator. She does private readings and welcomes every opportunity with which to communicate with the spirit realm with the intent of bringing hope, peace, and understanding to all interested. So welcome back, Gypsy Moon.
Thank you so much.
Now, as Jeff was also reading your bio, which a lot of it I have written down to start with, and you started out at an early age. You had an experience at the age of 2. You experienced astral projection. How did that happen, or what happened with it? Did you realize what was going on?
At the time, no, of course. I mean, I was only 2 years old. And my mother was actually in an apartment, cleaning it, getting it ready for us to move into. So she had left me with my great-grandmother for the evening, and Grandma was babysitting. She had tucked me into bed, and I was missing and wanting my mother. So I just went to her wherever she was. It wasn't like I had any idea other than I was looking for her soul or her spirit, wanting to be close to her. And my mother, who was also a psychic, it ultimately ended up being a shared experience, because as she was sitting there on the floor, scrubbing the floor, she looked up to watch me walk through the door and into her arms. Later in life, when I got a little bit older and could communicate better, I discussed the experience with her, and I remembered everything about the apartment, the floor plan, and, things about the inside, the interior of it. And she was kind of mystified by that, because she had thought that it was her experience, not one that we necessarily shared together on a conscious level, because she understood that there was no way possible for me to have remembered even living there at 2 years old. And we'd only lived there a short time, like 6 months or something, So I think that's kind of, was one of the most profound experiences at that early of an age. The grandmother that she had left me with was a nurse who used to do hospice in her home. So there was a lot of paranormal activity in the house itself growing up. So that kind of led to more experiences later on down the road. But the astral projection to my mother was the first of memory that I can recall.
So when you did that, how long, like, were you there and just hugged her and then you was back home?
Yeah.
Just like that?
Yeah, it was brief. Just needed a hug, before I went to bed.
Have you done astral projection before? I mean, since, rather?
Oh, since, yes, absolutely. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Really?
I've actually, and I can't say that it's, it works exactly the way I want it to every time, because it's really kind of done on more of a subliminal way, but there are ways that I have been able to control it, and I have been able to astral project to people and have them have shared experiences with me, which to me is, incredible. I really like doing that. There was a time where I was afraid to astral project because I was young and probably in like my teen years. I was afraid that if I left my body, maybe something else would slip in, and then when I came back, I wouldn't be able to get in, But my mom explained to me that, it doesn't really work that way, and that it's, a safe passage, and there's ways to protect yourself. So with her encouragement, I learned to, really enjoy the adventure and the experience of it.
Well, later on, you moved to a farmhouse. And and at the age of 5, you seen your first solid apparition.
Yeah.
What took place with that?
Well, at the age of...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it was before we moved to the farmhouse in Wisconsin. We were living out in Colorado Springs, actually. And that was a shared experience as well. There was me and 2 other children were playing in an open field that laid between our houses. And we found a little sandy area by this big boulder, and we were digging in the sand, like how kids bend over and they dig and you kick up the sand between your legs behind you. Mm-hmm. And we were digging for gold. That's what we were saying. Let's find the gold. The gold is here. Let's dig for gold. We were all excited. And while we were digging, an arrow shot into the sand in the middle of us. And it startled us. So we looked up and we saw 2 Native Americans. One was in full headdress and the other was a scout. And they were just staring at us. Well, the two of my friends, they ran home screaming. They were terrified and went home and told their parents. Well, I was a little bit more mischief than that. I mean, I was upset that they ruined my good time. So I went looking for them. And I'm like, because I thought they were like being bullies trying to scare us away. But when I turned around to look back at them, they were gone. And they were actually solid apparitions. And at that time, I didn't recognize them as being a ghost. Okay? The ghosts that I had seen up until that point in my life were more translucent. You could see through them. They weren't solid like you and me. And these natives were solid like you and I. So at that point in time, I went home and I followed the creek bed home, thinking I'd find their footprints or something, but they were gone. And the field was wide open. I mean, you could see all the way across it in any direction. So there was really nowhere for them to hide. And when I got home, my mom was on the phone with my friend's parents listening to the story for the second time about what happened. And so, of course, she said, sounds like you had an eventful day. What happened? So, I told her what happened. And, at that point in time, and it might sound unusual, but I kind of had an unusual upbringing. my mom and I sat there and discussed time travel because we're like, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was like some kind of hiccup or interdimensional crossing, or, you know, something happened there. And we didn't really turn to the ghostly paranormal again because they were solid. Well, later, when we moved to the farmhouse in Wisconsin, and I started dealing with the solid apparitions that were there, was finally when I was like, oh, okay. So the Indians in Colorado were ghosts. You know, it was like solving the mystery with more mystery.
Now,
And everybody saw the arrow?
Everybody saw what?
The arrow?
Yeah, the arrow. Yeah, and yeah, I know. And the common question is, did you grab the arrow? And sadly, no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at 5 years old, I just didn't think to grab it. You know, it was a sharp object that scared my friends away. I was more interested in the bullies that were shooting it. You know, but no, I sure wish I would have grabbed that arrow if it was even truly there. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, but it was when we were there.
Okay.
So it was a very interesting experience, which actually led to more interesting paranormal experiences in Colorado, dealing with Native Americans. So, you know, it's I kind of view it as protection, truthfully. I mean, when they've come through for me, it's always been in a protective form.
Okay.
well, now, is your mom...
You had more Native American experiences there?
In Colorado, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We captured probably the longest EVP. I think it's even on my Facebook if you want to check it out. The longest EVP I've ever recorded. We were in a cemetery that I had some problems in previously with a spirit there that decided to go ahead and jump me. And when I went back the next day, we were recording, and in the wind, as the wind gets louder, you can hear the chanting get louder. And then as the wind dies down, the chanting dies down. So it's really it's really quite beautiful. But you can hear the chanting of the Native Americans. And I felt totally protected within that. I think that it came on the wind. And we actually went as far as to investigate that, too. A good friend of mine who lives out there and does a lot of investigating with me, Dennis Batchelor, he went all over that town just to make sure that there were no ceremonies going on or in the surrounding towns, you know, because, I mean, sound carries. So he wanted to just, you know, make sure that something wasn't going on that we were misinterpreting, because in the recording, you can I mean, there's no mistake what it is. You can hear it.
That's amazing.
It is.
So is your mom also spiritual?
Oh, extremely. Yeah.
How about her mom?
Yeah, she actually, my grandmother was very much into the Ouija board. And as a result of that, my mom had a lot of strange and bizarre experiences herself growing up. And as a result of that, we weren't allowed. You know, she completely forbid the Ouija board in our house. And she just kind of, you know, made us use our God-given talents and work with, you know, the tools that you have, because you're not using any other tools here. So yeah, they were kind of outlawed. And you know, I mean, I grew up respecting that. I'm like, that's fine if you're not comfortable. I mean, I didn't seem to need a Ouija board to talk to the spirits that were there. So, you know, to me, it was not really a big deal. Not a loss, anyway.
So were tarot cards forbidden as well?
No, that's actually what my mother does for a living.
Oh.
She does very well with that. So, yeah, no, that's her specialty. Absolutely. And she's also the author of A Medicine Woman Speaks by Cinnamon Moon. She's a medicine woman. So you can kind of understand with that kind of background. I mean, she's pretty open-minded.
Wow. Well, now,
Yeah.
when you moved to the farmhouse, that was in Wisconsin, was it?
Yes.
Okay. You was about 5 when you moved there?
No, I was about 8 when we moved there.
When you moved there. Okay.
Yeah. 5 was Colorado.
Then you found out that there was spirits there at that house also.
Yeah.
How did you find out that there was spirits there? I mean, were they friendly?
I walked in. I walked into the house and they were there.
They were
No,
sort of
quite
the welcome
literally.
wagon, I guess.
Actually, one of them was, yeah. There were several people that died in the house. One gentleman died upstairs of a heart attack. Another man was found underneath the dining room table. He had had a very violent death. He was a diabetic. There was a young woman, Eva, that was shot in the kitchen by a jealous boyfriend. There was a little girl who choked to death when she got excited because her dad came home unexpectedly from a business trip, and she was sitting at the dinner table eating, and she got, oh, daddy, daddy, but she started choking on her food, and she ultimately ended up dying. They couldn't save her.
Huh.
So, there was four deaths that we knew about, and all 4 of those deaths had active spirits with that, I actually had an opportunity to interview and meet with the arresting officer when the woman got murdered there. And he told me, his version of the story and what happened. And it kind of really answered some questions for us, because there was a lot of things going on in that house. I mean, all of the typical stuff you see in the movies. It was, we walk down in the kitchen, all the cupboards are open, the noises, the lights, the sounds. I mean, it was just, and it wasn't like an everyday thing, but it pretty much was an every week thing. There was always something going on at a pretty steady pace. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that I did interact with them and I enjoyed it. I mean, quite frankly, it was a lot of fun, because they weren't harmful and they weren't scary, but they did like their acknowledgement, to be sure. One thing that happened that was pretty interesting was how one night my mom and I were sitting on my bed upstairs, in the upstairs of the house, and we heard this loud crashing sound. And it sounded like somebody just dumped out the cupboards, or all the shelves fell, and we ran running down the stairs, expecting to have a big mess to clean up, And we got down there, and there was nothing out of place. I mean, we couldn't figure out where that sound came from. And that happened on more than one occasion. And that's how eventually we solved that mystery, by finding out about Eva, who was killed there. And she was actually doing dishes, standing at the kitchen counter, when he came in and shot her through the back. And when her body hit the floor, the dishes broke. So she was found with broken dishes around her. So once you kind of get the historical facts on what was going on, all of a sudden things started making more sense. When you were sitting in the living room and, you got a couple of cats that are sitting on the couch with you, and you hear a thump upstairs right above your head, that sounds like a cat jumping off a dresser, and you would think that's had to be what it was, but the cats are sitting right here with you, and there's no other cats in the house, And then we find out later that, there was a man who rolled out of bed and was found on the floor next to the bed, and he had a heart attack. So then when you start the pieces, it's kind of like a little jigsaw puzzle. When you get the history, all of a sudden these things become explained. And once they're explained, you lose that fear. Because it somehow just kind of makes sense to you, It's like, oh, that's him.
That's him.
Yeah. How old is the farmhouse? How old is the
It's
farmhouse?
over 100. Yeah, it's over 100 years old. Yeah.
So definitely people would have died in the homes. People tend to do at that point. So people tend to forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And they think, oh, somebody's died here. Yeah, it must be haunted. Well, not necessarily, but in this case, it sounds like definitely there was some residual.
Yeah, there was definitely residual, and there was definitely intelligent. Eva was intelligent. She actually would communicate pretty regularly. You could see her. She was a solid apparition in the house. My mom experienced her as well. I had friends that would come over and experience her, and then they wouldn't come back because that wasn't your mom. It's like, no, my mom's not here. Yeah, I got to go home now. I mean, literally, I grew up with kids that like didn't want to come to my house because it was haunted, and they feared it. But for me, it was fun. You know, my mom helped me with that, though. You know, she really kind of helped me understand what was going on, and knowledge is power, and it really kind of keeps fear at a minimum. And she always kind of raised us not to live a fear-based life. You know, you got to always come from a place of love, and that just seems to work better for us.
Wow.
So I have to ask you about hauntings in a situation like this, especially when you are so sensitive to it. Do you communicate with them and ask them why they're not moving on, or are you just respecting their right to be there?
Both, depending upon the circumstances. Obviously, like when I'm investigating, you know, I'll certainly ask questions. I don't necessarily believe in that I have the power to make them cross over or anything crazy like that.
Yeah.
But I will ask them if they see the light, if they wouldn't mind walking towards it because they'd be happier there. I can, you know, suggest it. But for the most part, I kind of feel like they're where they're supposed to be. I don't think that they're necessarily not supposed to be there. Because of the dying process, I mean, once the body is dead, the spirit has to transition, okay? And that transition process is different for all of us. Some, and a lot of it's going to depend on, you know, what level your soul is at. And, you know, like an older soul is probably going to transition very quickly and smoothly, whereas a younger soul might drag their heels a little bit. They might not be quite so ready to go. They might not know they're dead. They might know they're dead and just aren't quite ready to let go of whatever it is that's here that makes them want to stay, you know? So, it's kind of like the house down the road, which, you know, that's been haunted for years. It's like it's probably some little old lady who loves her house and isn't just quite ready to leave yet. And to us, it's been haunted for 100 years. But for her, because there's no time on the other side, it's a blink of an eye. So she's only been there for, you know, in her mind, maybe a week. But in our time, you know, as far as the relevance goes, you know, it might be 50 years or 100 years. So because of the discrepancy there, I just don't really feel like it's for us to kick anybody out necessarily. I mean, you know, they have their own process and transitions to go through and their own reasons for doing it that way. You know, I have communicated with many a spouse, men who die and do not want to walk into that light until they can do it with their wife. I've been married to that woman my whole life. I love her. I'll wait right here. And they're stubborn.
Wow.
They're just digging their heels in, you know. They just, nope, we'll do this together. I'll wait right here for her. And it's like, who am I to tell them no? You know, I mean, maybe that's the way it's supposed to happen. Maybe if he left, she'd have a harder time transitioning. Maybe she's going to, you know, maybe that's where he's going to meet her. Right?
Do you think that older generations didn't have that much knowledge of the actual going to the light once they're dead, whereas now with the emergence of all the paranormal to where a lot of the people now knows about that, do you think that those who die now and see the light would go to it quicker than somebody who died generations ago?
That's a really good question. And I honestly feel like there's two different levels that you're talking about here. On a conscious level, we definitely know more. But on a subconscious level, we've known all along. So I think that, and again, it's going to depend on what level the soul is at. So if you have an old soul, say even 100 years ago, they know. They already know. You know, they know they don't have to cross over right away. They know they can cross over and come back. They don't have to wait, you know. Whereas a younger soul, you know, is going to have a little bit less experience at that transition. And so it really has nothing to do, not nothing. I would say it doesn't have as much to do with our conscious thought as it does our subconscious or our soul memory.
How many of them do you think is actually afraid to go in the light?
I think it's a small percentage comparatively for all those that transition, you know. And a lot of that actually does come back to that conscious thought. We were talking a little bit before the show, and you kind of touched on it, whereas, let me see, I'm getting interrupted here. I'm sorry. Spirit's trying to come through.
Oh, really? Well, they might be trying to say something that we should know.
And believe me, they'll cut right in and they'll go off on their own little tangent, and you won't even hear a skip or a beat in my voice. It'll just take over. It's funny how it works. Oh, sometimes though it's not so funny because I'm trying to get my point across, and they'll be like, we need to interject, and then I'm like, I'm off. So. Can you restate the question for me?
Oh.
Are you blocked? Are you blocked too? That's probably what's going on.
I don't even remember what it was.
They're like, yeah, no, we don't want.
Do you remember what it was, Barbara?
Answer that. About him being afraid to go into the light. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
Oh, the conscious and the subconscious level.
Right.
Well,
that's what we was talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm back on track. Thank you. Say, for instance, you lived a life that was not so nice. You weren't so good to people. Maybe you were horrible. Maybe to the point where you did such terrible things that you believe that you're damned to hell and you deserve it. You know, you're like, I'm going to hell. There's no question about it. I killed a man. I raped a woman. I did whatever, and I'm going to hell. If you believe you're going to hell, you're going to experience hell. That's just how that works. That is kind of an interesting thing, because when that happens and you're experiencing hell, your spirit guide is waiting for you to be done with it. They're going to go ahead and let you experience what you think you need to experience, because that's going to be part of your process. But your spirit guide is going to be with you, standing back at a distance, watching you let it play out, however long it takes. And then when you're ready and you're done punishing yourself, then you're going to continue on with your transition. So it's my understanding that hell doesn't really exist, not in the perspective that we believe it to, because all souls are ultimately restored. There is a complete rehab over on the other side. And it's again, the whole transition process is going to be very unique to each individual soul and how they live their lives and what lessons they came to learn. And some of the process is repetitive and the same, but depending upon the level of the soul, it's going to vary. Everybody gets to have their little meet and greet, but a more advanced soul won't need a meet and greet. It's like, hi, Fred, see you later. Going over here now, because that's, the next step. I mean, they can bypass it because they're not necessarily, they've done it so many times, they know what the next step is, so they'll just move ahead to that. Whereas a newer soul might take some coaxing, It might be, come on into the light, come this way. Can you feel your cluster? Can you feel your group? They're calling to you, And it might be a longer process to get them to the meet and greet where they're going to see their friends and relatives and loved ones, And then you have the fact that not all of your loved ones are necessarily in the same group. So you're going to meet your group loved ones first, and then the loved ones that are part of different groups are going to be secondary and, and third. And then once you get through that meet and greet, you're going to go into what my favorite part is the life review. And it's during the life review that the real judgment comes. But it doesn't come from God, and it doesn't come from your spirit guides or even your guardian angels. It comes from you. Because when you go through this, you're going to experience your life from everybody else's perspective. So if you brought someone love, or you made someone feel loved, you're going to feel the love that they felt. If you hurt someone, you're going to feel the pain that you caused. And this isn't a punishment or a reward. It's to gain insight and compassion, not only for them, but for yourself. So you're going to judge yourself on how well you think you did to achieve your soul's goals in coming here in the first place. And you will. You'll go through it and you'll be like, oh, God, I blew that, didn't I? And then might be something else, and you're like, oh, wow, well, hey, I did that good, And so, I mean, you'll get you'll acknowledge where your strengths and your weaknesses were. And it's, it really is. I mean, to oversimplify, it all comes down to love. It's all about the love and the compassion, and you learn that through experience. So those things that people will ask me, well, why does this have to happen? Why do people come to Earth to kill and do horrible things, And it's like, well, sometimes, we're not very good at this. We're not all great at what we're trying to accomplish here, because we're actually mixing the human being, the human mind, with a spiritual soul. There's a melding that takes place, and to try and get it to work together is tricky because we are human. We do make mistakes. We entertain our egos, and it's just part of the process. Now, as souls, we're trying to weed this out of humanity: the violence, the anger, the ego, and we're making strides. We might not see it within our lifetime, but when you see it over generations, we're making strides. We're making big strides. And in this time right now, I mean, you can see it everywhere. Everybody notices it. We're taking a big step up here. For sure we are. So we are advancing, but we're not perfect. We certainly are not. So we're gonna have to experience things from different perspectives. So by that I mean, like if in a past life I beat my wife, I'm going to come back again and experience being a wife that's been beaten. And it's not a punishment. It's to gain insight to the mistakes I've already made. Some people call that karma. But we do it wantingly and willingly. We come back to have these experiences because it's part of our growth on a spiritual level. It really is. So everything really does happen for a reason, but it's not always for us to understand why. And a lot of it is confusing to us because we come to Earth with an amnesia of sorts. Not everybody, but most people don't remember their past lives. Some do, but that's not the norm. And the reason for that is because when we come here, we need that clean slate in order to fully live out the lives we're intended to live out. And that's why I say now, with like ghosts and stuff, the non-believers go, I don't believe in ghosts. It's like, well, it's okay. You don't have to. I mean, maybe that's not for them to meddle in. Maybe they're supposed to be focusing on other things. That's okay. I mean, I'm not against people who don't believe in ghosts, but having experienced them myself, I'm certainly not going to, entertain an argument either. I mean, everybody's entitled to believe and think what they want. They all have their own path. And I respect that.
Now, if
but then, go ahead.
If you died and you say are reincarnated, the spirit that died, is it still there, or is it no longer there because it comes back reincarnated?
That's a good question. I'm going to try and explain that to the best that I can. It is my understanding that our souls, you have to realize, let me first state that it's very difficult at times to explain what is happening on the other side because there's very little point of reference here to explain it. So in this example, I'm using this example not to be literal, but just to give you a visual of what it is I'm trying to explain. Okay?
Okay.
The soul is like an orange. And when we come here, we take as many segments of that orange as we feel we need to achieve what we want to achieve. Okay? So, and each segment is an amount of energy. So we may only bring 3 slices of a segment. The rest of us is on the other side. On the other side, 3 more segments of our orange could be somewhere else. So it is possible to live multiple lives. It is possible to be in more than one place at one time. That's why when you try to communicate with the other side, say you want to talk to your grandma, or you're thinking about your mother, it's like ringing a bell. It doesn't matter whether she's reincarnated in a solar system across the world, way off, she can still come to you. Just with the thought, because it's like ringing a bell. And they love to have their acknowledgement. So if there's somebody on the other side that you want to talk to them. They can hear you, whether they've been I'm getting so much physical validation. This is a message somebody obviously needs to hear. They can hear you. Their communication may be very subtle in return. Don't dismiss it. Trust it. But whether they've been reincarnated or not, you're not interrupting them. It's not letting them rest in peace, because love is eternal. Love is eternal. Never goes away.
Now, you bring up a really good point here, because we do have people, or supposedly, that reincarnate almost immediately. And when somebody comes and asks you for a reading to contact that person, basically what you're doing is you're speaking with a fragment of that soul, correct?
That's right. Correct.
Okay. That makes sense. So that the whole soul is fragmented, sort of, so that part of the soul is reincarnated, but part of the soul is still wherever it is, and that's the communication level. Okay.
That's right. Yep. That's how you're able to astral project too. When you astral project, like if my mother's really good at it. She'll astral project into my life and call me. What are you up to? I'll be like, what makes you think I'm up to something? And she'll call me out on it. Well, just thought I'd call. I was like, uh-huh. But she has permission to peek in on me anytime. I gave her that a long time ago. She's too helpful not to allow it. But yeah, you can. That's kind of the same thing. It's just soul-to-soul communication. If I'm upset and I want my mom, I can astral project to my mother, and she knows I need her. I'll visit her in her dream, or she'll feel something funny or present. She'll feel nudged to call me, what she refers to it as often. I just felt a nudge. And I think that one of the things that makes it so easy to dismiss, and what I like to encourage people to do, is, when you're sitting there looking at a family album and you're, I miss my mom, I wish she was still here, and, oh, look, we were on family vacation, that sort of thing. You're consciously thinking about her. okay? In doing so, believe me, she knows you are. Again, love is eternal. They can feel that. But when you're doing dishes and all of a sudden your mom pops into your head and it's like, oh, yeah, Mom doesn't like it when I do this, or she likes it when I do that, or she said to stack them this way, not my way. Or, you're cooking in the kitchen and doing a recipe and all of a sudden, oh, more salt. Why did I put more salt in? I wouldn't, you get little nudges like that because they're there with you. And they pop into your head. They pop into your thoughts. That's one of the easiest ways on a conscious level for them to communicate with you is telepathically. They will put thoughts into your head. And when they pop in out of nowhere, that's usually a really strong indication that it isn't you thinking of them, it's they're near. You can also become depressed, sleepy, sad, God, I've been emotional all day. I don't know why. Well, it could be spirit energy. For me, growing up, in my especially in my 20s and 30s, I had a lot of anxiety. And I was like anybody else. Doctor gives you a pill for that, right? Calms you right down. And I was having like these full-blown anxiety attacks. And then somehow along the way, and I really kind of contributed to my great-grandmother, who is long since crossed, but the one that was a nurse, she actually takes very good care of me from the other side. But she, kind of pointed out that, well, maybe it's not maybe it's not stress. Maybe it's something else. Maybe you should, learn how to deal with it differently. Maybe it's just spirit energy, because spirit energy makes me feel anxious. That's how I know something's about to happen. That's how I know someone's near, is I start getting anxiety. Mm-hmm. So, I quit taking all that crazy medication, and I started paying attention to the anxiety, and I started using it like a tool. Work like a charm. Work like a charm. I mean, next thing I know, I'm like, yeah, about the next 15 minutes, something's going to happen. Keep your eyes open.
See, now I call that the inner voice of doom. Mm-hmm. Where you get that you know something's going to happen, but you don't quite know what, and it's in the background, and it's sort of like tension builds and builds and builds, but you have no idea what. It's just like somebody saying something's going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, I woke up one day and I couldn't breathe, and I don't have breathing problems. And I was like, oh my God, this is the strangest thing. I mean, I'm having a hard time. I can't catch my breath. I'm really having a hard time breathing. And my son and I went downtown. My granddaughter was participating in a concert. And we parked the car, walked half a block. I had to stop, bend over, try and catch my breath. And he's like, Mom, are you sure you don't want to go to the hospital? I mean, I've never seen you like this. And I'm like, you know what? Let's listen to her sing, and then we'll go to the doctor, because this is not right. Something's wrong with me. I mean, I really thought I was probably going to have a heart attack and die or something. I didn't know what was going on. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. So my granddaughter went ahead and sang, and afterwards, I started feeling better. So we're like, okay, well, let's walk through a couple shops before we head to the next town. Started walking through the shops, and I got into one of the shops, and I couldn't leave. I'm like, no, there's something here I got to buy. And I couldn't figure out what it was. There was nothing I wanted. I walked around that store 3 times. And it's just a little gift shop, and I'm like, finally, I kind of got frustrated because there was really nothing I wanted to buy, nothing at all. So I just grabbed some mints off the counter, and I went up to pay for them. I didn't even want the mints, but I had to buy something. And I didn't know why. But I'm just following my instincts, right? Okay, we'll get some mints. So I get up to the counter, and the lady takes my card, and she says, oh, Gypsy Moon, that's a beautiful name. And I said, why, thank you. I'm a psychic medium. And we both stood there staring at each other with our jaws dropped. And I'm like, I normally never introduce myself that way. I'm sorry that I really didn't. I mean, I didn't know what to say for myself, And there was 2 women behind the counter. The second woman walked away. And the first woman stayed there with my card in her hand. And she said, I had a psychic reading done once, and it actually was really cool. The lady was, very spot on, and that was, So come to find out that, well, this is her telling me, proceed, right? So I did what they call, pulling a Caputo. And I ended up giving her a reading on the spot. And I said, well, are you open to receiving a message today? And she's like, yeah, I would love one. So I'm like, okay. And I said, I've been having trouble breathing all morning. And so I have a feeling that this is someone who's been having some breathing problems. And she's nodding her head. I'm like, okay. And then I just kept going with it. And, it was a man. Well, it turns out her father had died 3 days ago from lung cancer. And
wow.
they ended up giving her a yeah, right? But see, you don't, like I said, it's always putting the puzzles together, You get a piece here, you get a piece there, and you got to just keep going and follow it until you get to where you got to be. Well, he actually, the more I did the reading, the more he came through. He stepped in and took over the reading because I don't even remember all of it. But I did have my daughter-in-law there with me, and she watched my face change. Nobody ever pulls out a video for this. I'd really like to see this stuff happen for myself. But she did. She said, I almost fell down. I almost tipped over. She had to jump to kind of like catch me. And next thing I know, I was holding this woman's hand, and I felt this transference of energy that was so intense. And apparently he had been very abusive to her growing up, and she was having a real hard time forgiving him. And he needed her forgiveness. He didn't want to leave without it. So that was the whole thing of it. It wasn't really me grabbing her hand, it was him, and he literally took some of her pain. Not all of it. He couldn't get it all. But he got a lot of it. And that's what almost knocked me off my feet.
Wow.
By the time we were done, yeah, it was an incredible reading. By the time we were done, I was like, I had to go home. I think I stayed on the couch for a couple of days after that one. But she had changed her entire attitude from the beginning of the reading, where, she was angry. She was, shaking her head no, she wasn't going to forgive him, to the point where by the time we were done, she was crying and nodding her head yes, and sending him on his way, So, I mean, there was some really profound healing that took place there. And honestly, I didn't have anything to do with it. I don't look at it from that perspective, because I wasn't the one doing it. He was. He did that. He might have used me, but that's what I am. I'm the medium. I'm the in-between guy. I'm just, delivering the message. I'm not the one doing anything. That was him. Her father took on her pain. Her father gave her the love that she needed to heal. That didn't come from me. That came through me. And when I get to have experiences like that can help people, man, I'll tell you what, nothing makes me love my job more than something like that.
Wow. Now, you was talking a while ago, and you kind of answered this particular question that I had, but I thought I'd go ahead and ask it anyway again. As the years go by, we get older, as it shows in many ways on our appearance, you might say.
We get wrinkly.
Yes. So does a spirit age in their appearance?
Or
when they die, do they stay do they stay the same when they die for all time, or do they actually grow older?
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's a different color that comes with an older soul. As the soul ages, from that perspective, that's, which actually kind of makes it easy on the other side to identify the different levels. And so there's, as far as color goes, Yes, they do age. But from a physical appearance, what I think is interesting is when you're on the other side, you project whatever you want to project from one to another. If you have a favorite body, you may project that body more often than others. Typically, you're going to project what you want someone to recognize or see. So if you knew your grandfather and he always looked old as far as you knew him, he's not going to project himself to you and looking like he did when he was 30, because you're not going to recognize him. You're like, who are you? You know, I might even scare you. But if you see that wrinkled old grandpa that you used to love so much, you recognize him right away, and you're not going to be fearful, you know. And that's, you know, he's going to want to be acknowledged for who he is to you.
Right.
So they have that ability to project themselves however they would be recognized. And that could be, you know, that's going to be dependent upon who is seeing them, who they want to project themselves to. So you've got that from the perspective of them projecting themselves here on Earth. But on the other side, amongst each other, they can project whatever they prefer to project. And it's different because even regardless of who you project yourself as from what lifetime, you're still going to be recognized eventually, for sure. You know, maybe not right away, but eventually those that know you by your essence. Mm. So even if you project yourself, like, say you and I died and we're on the other side, and I project myself to you as a man that I used to be from another lifetime. You might not recognize me as Gypsy right away, but eventually, after maybe, you know, being around me for a few minutes, you're going to be like, oh, I know you. You used to be Gypsy too. You know what I mean? So there's that acknowledgement. You can't hide from one another. There's really no sneaky anything, because everything is so translucent. I mean, it's your intentions are there. You know, they're readable. There's really nothing to hide. No way to hide it.
Wow. Barbara, we got about 8 minutes here before we take a break. You got questions. I know you got a ton of them.
Well, I was thinking that this is probably a little like soul entanglement, and that there's tendrils or whatever that souls throughout different types of reincarnations know each other, because somehow it's kind of like, you know, quantum entanglement, you know, two elements, you know, sort of once they touch, they know each other, or they react to each other all the time.
That's right.
And
That's
this is kind of in the same way that on a larger scale, no matter who you come back as, you know each other because it's that way.
Yeah, and I mean, our conscious mind is very limited. I mean, it is so limited. You know, we can't remember what we had for breakfast 10 years ago.
I can't remember yesterday.
Side, you have a memory of, right? Yeah, exactly. But on the other side, you have the memory of multiple lifetimes. You know, and we quite frankly can't handle that much knowledge here. You know, I mean, we're not even supposed to be looking or focusing on that necessarily, because there's other things that we're supposed to be focusing on. And most of what we're supposed to be focusing on is how to get away from the fear and onto the love. Not live a fear-based life. To face our fears, to overcome our fears, to overcome the challenges, to take the risk, take the challenge. Go for what we want. Go for what we know we need, you know, instead of being afraid to try.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were talking before about the analysis of the person when they pass over, and there's this wonderful movie with Albert Brooks called Defending Your Life.
One of the best.
It sort of has that quality to it where, you know, you're presented with, you know, ideas of what your life was like and how you grew and what mistakes you made and what you learned from it. And, you know, from there you decide where you're going.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we were even talking about like the suicides and stuff. With that, I always like to try and kind of compare Earth to like a college. We come here, it's like a university. And before we come, we're going to choose our courses. And when we take it in our own hands to leave early, we're choosing to drop out. And sometimes it's justifiable, and sometimes it's not justifiable. But it's it's kind of like dropping out of high school. I mean, there's nothing wrong with dropping out of high school. I mean, I don't slight anybody for doing it, but I do know that everybody that has wishes that they had just finished. They only had a couple of more years to go or a year left. They wish they would have finished. And when I've dealt with people that have taken their own lives, more times than not, they wish they would have just finished. Even some of those that were terminally ill. So there's something to be said about going ahead to finish, because if you don't finish, you're coming back. You're coming back, and you're going to still have to deal with all the things that you didn't want to deal with. You're going to be dealing with it on the other side. And then you're going to come back. It's like I just wasted this whole time. Like somebody who's 25 years old and kills themselves. It's like you just wasted 25 years because you got to come back and do it again anyway. You're going to have to redo. So
can they redo it and not kill herself the second time?
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Sure it does. People make the same mistakes over and over.
No, but I mean, if they come back to try and rectify stuff, can they this time go through life and not kill themselves?
Oh, yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, definitely. That's what you want to do. You want them to finish.
Yeah.
But we all have exit points. There's at least 3 exit points we all get. And the soul makes it. This isn't a conscious decision. Suicide's a conscious decision, but the more I study it, the more I realize that it is also an exit point. Not all the time, but sometimes it is an exit point that is given. And the soul decides when you're going to go. I mean, it's really up to the individual soul, whether you choose to leave as a child, whether you choose to leave in the middle of your life or the end of your life, if you want to live it out. But that's a decision the soul makes. So I have a profound respect for when people die, because I believe that that's when that soul has decided to make their exit, and I respect that. I don't think anybody dies too soon or too late. It was a choice that was given and made. And I respect choices. We always have free will. See, that's the thing. And some of that free will is on the subconscious side of our life.
There is a stage play called Greetings, which is one of the most fascinating plays I've ever seen. My brother starred in a production of it, so I saw several performances of it, and I've always wanted to, if I were to manage to break through and become, a filmmaker that I could choose my own projects, I would love to make this into a feature film, because it's about a family that is very dysfunctional in a comical way. It's kind of a dark comedy, but it takes place at Christmas time, and they have a mentally challenged adult son who can barely speak. He only has a few words that he's able to say, and while the other son and the other son's fiance arrived for the holidays, the mother reports that the older brother suddenly sat up and looked like he could think for a moment and said greetings, and then went back to swaying and everything. And they're like, well, maybe it was just a fluke or something. But it turns out that there is a higher being that comes in and essentially takes over the body of the older brother. It's a fascinating, and it's like I say, it takes into account a lot of these things. And the fiance, he points out that all of them have known each other for many, many lifetimes. And he lists off all the stuff that they've done, including murderers and prostitutes and thieves and bankers and all sorts of stuff, with one of my favorite lines in theater where the fiance says, what kind of prostitute was I? And he just goes, enthusiastic. But what's really powerful about this is that the fiance, her one of her baggages is that her younger sister was killed by a car when she was very, very young. And so she, not a kind of accusatory, asked her, "Why? How can you explain the death of my sister?" He says, "I have an answer, but you won't like it." She says, "Well, try me." And she says, "It is possible that her death was so much of her choice before she was born than you'd want to believe." And whoa, that hits some major nerves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of like the whole Sandy Hook shooting with all those young children. They came on a big mission, and they knew before they came what they were doing. And that incident sent a wave of love around this planet that could be felt physically by many sensitives worldwide. There were children that were getting hugs that hadn't been hugged in months. There were parents that were grateful with a gratitude they had never known. It truly was amazing, the impact on this planet in raising the vibration that those children had. And their purpose did not go unnoticed. I mean, it truly did not. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding it from that perspective, because it's always deemed as such a loss when a child dies. But you have to really, take comfort in knowing that soul made that decision for a reason. And even though you don't understand the reason, and it might not make sense, you really have to respect their choice to play that role. And it goes beyond the innocence of a child too. Even the people we think that shouldn't even deserve to be here because they're horrible people. In an odd kind of way, I have to respect them for coming because they're bringing with them lessons. They agreed to play the bad guy in this play. We need the bad guys. We actually need them because this isn't heaven. This is a learning ground. This is where we get our lessons. We take our licks.
Okay, it's break time. We're going to go ahead and take us a break, and we'll be back in about 4 or 5 minutes, something like that. Just your phone will be live, so just don't say anything. And Jeff, you want to take us out?
Yep. You're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with host Henry Foister, Ceiling Cap Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's guest, Gypsy Moon. So stay tuned for more Paranormal View after the break.
Para-X Radio, programming for the open mind.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for listening tonight, those in the chat room and those from around the world. We appreciate each and every one. Tonight we have with us Jeffrey Gould.
Hello.
And Barbara Duncan.
Howdy, folks.
And our great guest, Gypsy Moon.
Hey, everyone.
All right. I want to talk some, and Barbara might have a ton more questions, but I'd like to talk some more about you do paranormal investigations.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of places do you usually go to do investigations? Is it somebody calling you to come in, or do you go to other places of your own choosing?
Well, actually both. I mean, I really do like going to all the different historical locations. just because I'm kind of a history buff. So I've been to a lot of the go-to places, I guess, like Waverly Hills, maybe like the lighthouse over in St. Augustine. In fact, that St. Augustine's Old Town is fabulous. We've been up to Ohio and done a lot of investigating up there in Mansfield Prison, Prospect Place. I mean, so a lot of the ones that a lot of people watch on TV. We've actually had a lot of fun investigating those locations. But absolutely, we don't limit it to just that. We certainly would go to private homes where, especially if they're having like any kind of issues or problems, and try and help people learn how to deal with what it is that they're dealing with, and try to just bring some peace and resolution to the situations where possible. So we're kind of, all over the board, really. I mean, you can come to my house and hang out for a week, and we can have one right here. I don't have to go looking for them.
You have spirits in your house?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's not an old house. Nobody died here. In fact, I'm the first owner of it. So, but, they're here, and anybody who's spent more than a few days here has had an experience here. And it's kind of fun to watch other people have experiences, because they're, you don't tell them everything. And then all of a sudden they have that experience, and it's the same experience that somebody else had or one like it, I didn't know that this is actually the most I've ever seen ghost cats. I mean, they're cats. I've got cats. I've got a little girl. It's really more spirits that pass through, or if I have a reading coming up, sometimes spirits will come to me before the reading. Like, the day that I woke up and was having the trouble breathing, I didn't know I was going into a reading, but that's what ultimately happened. So, or before I go to a location, I may have a spirit visit me here at home, and then, in advance, a week later, I'm on an investigation somewhere, and that's where they came from. And the interesting thing about it is we have actually captured EVPs, either here at my house that belong to an investigation that's upcoming in a week, and we can validate it. We did this, again, this was a Colorado one, in Cannon City. They have the Abbey of the Holy Cross, which is an old monastery, and we were there investigating, and I got the name of a woman who was coming through to me while we were staying in the sister's house there, where all the nuns used to live. And turned out that the name that I got, I went to Dennis, and I'm like, Dennis, I got this name. Do they have records of the nuns that used to live there? Because I was in the sister's house, and that's where she was. I'm thinking it might be a nun or something. I don't know, but she came through pretty clear with her name. So I gave him the name, and he said, okay, well, we'll look into it later. And I'm like, okay. So we went about our business and, did our further investigation. Well, later that night, we went over to the prison. Turns out she was one of the prisoners at the prison. And he didn't want to tell me until we got there to see what else came, of course, But what she was doing over at the monastery is beyond me. She's across town over here, but she was over there. So, they come through when they want to come through. They don't necessarily care where you're at or what you're doing. They just kind of pop in. And really, people experience that more than they realize.
Wow. All right, Barbara.
Well, it's interesting that you would, there are some people, in some of the thought in the paranormal world is that you don't investigate your own home. So obviously you don't go along with that belief.
No, I don't like break out the equipment or anything, and it's not, well, I guess I have with the EVPs. I have. It's been done. But it's just it's not commonplace because I personally don't use a lot of equipment. That goes with an investigation, but I am so not technical. Everything breaks when I use it. So I just try to use me the way my mom taught me, But other people have had those kinds of experiences here too. So I mean, it's just kind of fun to watch. It's usually little prankster stuff. Dennis was here not too long ago, and he was here for a month, and he got an eyeful of an awful lot of things. He was like, I questioned you, Gypsy. I really didn't know for sure if some of what you were saying was true, but holy cow, I mean, he experienced footprints. He experienced the little girl standing right in front of him. And, I mean, to watch an old man jump that high off the couch was pretty entertaining for me. But, like I said, I mean, there's nothing harmful. There's nothing fearful or scary or evil or, it's just, I mean, I'm well protected and I use a lot of protection. So I think that, that helps too. But my point is that, I mean, these things happen all the time. They happen everywhere. They happen to everybody. It's just what, a lot of people just don't pay attention. You blow it off. Oh, that was my imagination. Because that's what you're trained to do when you're young as a child. And you think you've experienced something, and then the adult in the room tells you, oh, that's your imagination. You're just seeing things. That's not real. That didn't happen. My mom never said those things to me.
Huh.
My mom said, what did you see? What did it look like? What did it feel like? Was it a boy? Was it a girl? Was it a woman? Was it a man? Were they young? Were they old? Were they nice? Were they mean? She asked me questions.
Now,
which was different.
I've gotten all kinds of EVPs on investigations. I've never seen a person spirit. I've seen different things like when I was at the David Stewart farm in Gettysburg. I seen the Confederate soldiers, because it was a field hospital, I seen them smoking cigarettes. You'd see the little red dot, and it'd get bright and go out and stuff. But I've never actually seen a spirit. So, not necessarily wanting to, because I'm one of those people that I won't go nowhere by myself.
Yeah. I'm the one that they send in first, honestly. I mean, it's funny because I've been on investigation with, this guy who's like 6'2", 300 pounds, and he's like, you go first.
You go first.
Like, okay. Yeah, I go first. I'm always the one to go first. Because honestly, it's the ghosts don't scare me. The paranormal doesn't scare me. I mean, they can startle me. They definitely have the ability to startle me, but I'm not fearful of them. When I get scared, it's because I think it's a real person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if I'm like wandering around in the dark and I think I see somebody, I might get scared, but if it's not a real person, then I'm like relieved. I'm like, oh, okay, it's just a ghost.
Yeah.
We're good.
Wow. So, all right, Barbara.
Also, even in places like Waverly, which has been known for some rather physical activity in there.
I love Waverly.
So what was your experiences there?
I had such a great time at Waverly the first time I went that I actually went back with my son and his girlfriend and his best friend. I mean, we made it was like a family vacation for us, to tell you the truth. We're a little strange like that, I guess. I think actually there's more than just ghosts at Waverly. And by that, I mean, I don't even know that everything that's going on at Waverly is within my lane. I think it exceeds things that I know about based on the experiences that I've had there. There's definitely a lot of ghosts there. Absolutely. Good ones. I got some great evidence. I got a picture of a nurse. That you can see that on Facebook too. It's she's on there, and she was actually walking around with me, and it was interesting because we had been there all night, and it was the next morning. The sun is just rising, and nursing shifts are going to be like your 3 to 11, 11 to 7, 7 to 3, and they do it in those 8-hour shifts. Well, this would have been right around shift change. And I felt like I was doing rounds. And I'm walking around. I got this nurse walking behind me, and I know she's there. I can feel her. And I could feel her so strong that I literally took my phone and I was taking like selfies, and I was like aiming behind me because she was always behind me. I couldn't get her in front of me. When I turned around, she'd still be behind me. And that's actually how I ultimately ended up catching her. It was over my shoulder. There's actually several spirits in the picture, but she was the most pronounced. And I was expecting, the first time I went to Waverly, I was expecting to get scared. I was cautious because I had heard that there's some negative things going on there that definitely do get very physical. I'm very specific in what I'm willing to interact with. When I go on an investigation, I bring my team with me, my spirit guides. Anybody I communicate with has to go through them to talk to me. And otherwise I'm not interested. You got to be approved.
Got your own gatekeepers.
Seriously. And I don't want to communicate with anything negative energy. I just don't. I don't need that kind of negativity. I don't in life either. I don't want to be around negative people. I like to keep it positive, So I think that intent has a lot to do with what you're going to deal with when you go on these investigations. Now, if you're going in there and you want to stir up some demons and you want to raise some hell, then yeah, you can definitely do that at Waverly, and you can deal with the after costs of that because there's going to be repercussions. You know what I mean? Tony's been there as a tour guide for years. Tony's a big man, and he's been thrown around like a rag doll in that place. He has a very healthy respect for the paranormal activity that goes on there. But when I went, I was kind of surprised. I felt so much love. I mean, so much. It was like, it threw me off. I'm like, I thought I was going to be scared. I thought this was going to be like a kind of a spooky place because of all the negative stuff. And I didn't encounter anything negative there. I could feel a lot of love. I could feel a lot of intention. It was like the nurses that worked there really cared about their patients. There was a lot of love in that place too. And being that I only wanted to experience the positive, that's probably why I did. Because that was my intent. I wasn't there to stir up trouble. I went in with respect, and that's how I do it always. I always go in with a lot of respect for those that are there, and if they want to talk to me, I'm in their house. This ain't my house. I'm trespassing. So, I think that kind of makes a difference. But we did get a lot of good evidence out of that place. Both in video. I've got video on Facebook of my hair getting moved while I was laying in one of the morgue trays. Just before it happened, I got the smell of chemical. I'm like, oh, God, can you smell that? I smelled some chemical. It was like formaldehyde,
Right.
And then my hair moved on my shoulder all by itself. EVPs, anomalies in photographs, but it's, there's to me, that's like the best place to go. If you want to have a paranormal experience, definitely go to Waverly Hills. You'll have one. I can't imagine anybody getting out of there. Even a skeptic is going to become a believer in that place. But do go in with good intention. Do go in with respect, because there's another picture on Facebook that you might see where I'm in the death tunnel, and an image appeared on the wall beside me. And honestly, Barbara, it looks like an alien to me. It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before.
Really?
You can see the eyes. You can see it's got a long nose, like a giraffe, almost. Like, a giraffe's nose is long and flat. And then there's two big nostrils at the bottom. I don't know what that is. That's what I'm saying. There's things there that is completely out in my lane. And when I took that picture, we knew something was there. We felt it come up on us. as we were coming, we went all the way to the end of the tunnel. As we were coming back, we felt like we were being bum rushed from behind and started taking pictures. And, yeah, that's what came out. So
would that have been the creeper?
No, we got a great picture of the creeper too, though. Definitely. I mean, I'll have to check and see if that's on Facebook. If it's not, I'll put it on there for you. An amazing picture of the creeper. You can actually, the picture was taken in the dark, still has a shadow on the ground. Nobody could see it there. I mean, if you go to Waverly Hills, that place is clean. There's no debris laying around. There's not garbage on the floor. But you can clearly see, you're going to love this picture. I'll get it on. If it's not on Facebook already, I'll put it on there for you. I'll tag you in it.
All right.
So you can see it.
Now, speaking of the motto, when you leave, you believe, have you ever been to Post Town?
No, I have not been to Post Town yet.
Ooh, that's their motto. When you leave, you believe, because apparently it's super active in that elementary school.
Yeah, I definitely want to go there.
Yeah, that's
actually one on my list.
That's about 30 miles from me now. Used to be just around the corner.
I'm going to have to come up and see you. You got all that good stuff up there.
Oh, there's all kinds of places that I go to around here that have stuff in it. Preble County Historical Society is a good one. So, do you believe that, I know everybody wants to go in the dark to investigate, but isn't the same stuff there during the daytime too?
Yeah, I understand why some investigators prefer to do it at dark. It's quiet. You've got less noise contamination when you're trying to, gather evidence. And while I think evidence is great fun, I really do, and I totally appreciate and respect it, because I think that's something that they give you. That's a gift to you. If they're going to let you take their picture, that's a gift to you. Respect it. But I have been, and I think it depends on, the location too, because you go to like Sloss Furnace, that place is active 24/7. You can collect evidence there during the day. Now, you've got a lot of highway noise at times that you're going to have to deal with more during the day than at night. So I understand wanting to be there at night, but I got a picture of a shadow figure during the day, on a day visit, and most people that have been to that place will tell you it doesn't matter what time of day you go. The spirits are always active. Now, what negates that? I have no idea. No idea, it's just when they, I guess, feel they want to show themselves, I don't think we really catch them. I don't think we sneak up on them and catch them. No. I think that they allow us to see them.
Yes. And like I say, usually about the only thing that I use on an investigation is my recorder.
Yeah.
I've had cameras and taken pictures and just never actually get anything to me. But the recorder is where I actually get my evidence from. I know a lot of people try to use.
I like the EVPs.
Yeah. They try to use all these gadgets and stuff, but there's so many different things that can be intertwined in those gadgets that you can't really prove it unless you actually get an EVP.
I agree.
So, all right, Barbara, I'm taking all the time again. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I like to go. I go for the experience. If I don't get a single EVP or a single photo, I'm okay with that as long as I have an experience.
Yeah.
Or if I'm with someone who's never had an experience, I'll ask to skip that experience and I'll ask the spirits to let them have an experience. And that has actually worked, believe it or not. I took a friend over to the lighthouse in St. Augustine and wanted them to have an experience because they hadn't had one. So I did. I asked the spirits, and I'm like, will you please give them a profound experience, one that they can't deny, so that they can, just validate that you are indeed here. I know you're here, but I'll forego my experience if you'll just please touch them. And I'm talking to the spirits telepathically with thought, and sure enough, a little flick on the ear, and my friend was like, I just got touched in the ear. And I'm like, ask them to do it again. And they said, if that was you, do it again. And it happened again. And I'm like, okay, good. Now you're a believer. And that was the end of the story. You know, I mean, it's profound, you know, for them because they finally got to have that experience. But to me, that is so fulfilling when you can take a skeptic and turn them into a believer. And then they're like, okay, now I get it. Now I understand what you're talking about, you know.
Wow.
It's more profound, I guess, you know, to watch somebody else get off it. Because for me, I mean, it's like I've been touched, you know. I don't understand the whole rage about, oh, I was scratched. Okay, you got a scratch. I mean, it's not such a bad thing, is it really? I mean, if they did this, I think that's kind of cool. It doesn't bother me, you know. But to actually be physically touched is an incredible thing. When I was out at the Abbey in Colorado, a friend of mine, Tom, was out there, and he actually had, and I watched this happen, I watched a little boy jump on his back. Really? And what was super interesting to me was how Tom reacted to it, because as soon as I saw this little boy jump on his back, it was like a piggyback ride, you know, Tom literally like had to catch himself from falling over and put his hands down on both his knees and kind of leaned up against the wall, as if that ghost child had weight to him.
Huh.
You know, and I thought that was fascinating. That was the same night that Jim Fliss had, I watched a little girl, well, he actually invited the ghost children there, and he's like, you know, because he was bald, he said, you know, I got a smooth head. If you want to come up and rub my head, you can rub my head. You know, we're all sitting down on the floor. And I watched a little girl come through a door, and she went up to him and put her hands on both sides of his, you know, on both cheeks, and gave him a nosy. You know how like you rub noses with somebody?
Yeah.
And then she put her hand on top of his head, and he was getting a tingling sensation. He goes, "Oh, my cheeks are tingling," and you know, and then this was happening. And now my head's tingling. And we took photos of it and captured a small handprint right on top of his head. You know, so I mean, to have that physical interaction with spirits is so much more profound to me than a blurry photograph that may or may not be a spirit. You know, a video even, you know, of an object moving. I mean, that physical connection is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Wow. All right, Barbara.
Oh, I thought Jeff had a question.
Oh.
He was interrupted.
Not really. I was just trying to find the link for friggin' Sloss Furnace. I thought I had.
Gotcha.
Oh.
There's a question in chat, and Sherry wants to know if you've ever physically been attacked by a spirit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have. Which kind of has taught me how important it is to stay protected, and why today, you know, when I investigate, I have my guides take the wheel, so to speak. Jesus, take the wheel, you know. I've actually, the last time that I had a really bad occurrence, it was quite a strange experience. Where my body was taken over, and it was in a cemetery, and I was with a group, and as I was walking with this group, the further we went into the cemetery, the more irritated I got. I was angry, my arms were crossed, I started feeling almost like I had the flu. I didn't like any of those people. I was getting angry with the group because they were stepping on graves. I was, you know, some of them were, and I started kind of lagging behind the group. Meanwhile, my friend Lacey White was taking pictures of everybody, and she noticed that I was like dropped back, that I wasn't in the picture she was taking anymore. And of course, we're best friends, so she's trying to include me in the photos. And she noticed that I was back further, so she just kind of came over to check on me and see, you know, make sure I was okay. And I wasn't. I wasn't okay at all. She was talking to me, and I couldn't understand a word she was saying. I was looking at her, but it was like she was talking in tongues or something. I mean, nothing she said made any sense to me whatsoever. And she asked me if I was okay. And when I responded to her, the same thing happened. She couldn't understand a word I was saying. So she called a couple of other members of our group over, and they saw my face change, and I didn't look like myself anymore. I started taking on a much more masculine face. And I mean, this was a pretty serious thing, because I literally, this wasn't invited. I am a physical medium. I typically don't mind if a spirit wants to step in, like the old man did in the store. That was acceptable to me. That was wantonly and willingly giving it up. But this wasn't. This was actually, I was being forced, and that's not good. So I kind of lost my faculties. I mean, I couldn't speak. I wasn't even thinking for myself at that point. I don't even know where I was. I'm really, most of this story is based on what they told me. And the spirit had completely taken me over. They had to rush me out of the cemetery, and she put me in the car, and we drove down the road, and it took probably 5 minutes down the road until I felt like I was conscious again. Prior to that, I was in much more of a trance state, and didn't really know what happened. I mean, I 1 minute I was in the cemetery, and the next minute we were driving down the road. I'm like, what's going on? Where are we at? And she's like, she's driving the car and looking at me, driving the car and looking at me. She's like, are you okay? You feeling all right? I'm like, yeah, I think I am. I think I'm okay. What's going on?
Wondering what act of the horror film she's in.
Right. Yeah. Because she had never seen that happen to me before, where my physical features actually changed. And I told her the same thing I told my daughter-in-law. I said, when this stuff happens, you need to roll tape, because I've never seen this, and I want to see it happen. I mean, I joke about it when I'm on an investigation, and it's really kind of, I joke about it, but I seriously mean it. I mean, like, if I'm stuck to the ceiling, you need to video that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, don't put me down. Get your phone out and start rolling tape, because, I mean, I want to see this. When I drop, you can check on me.
We got one of the guests in the chat room here is Ghost Man. Apparently, he's been with you at some of the places. Do you know who Ghost Man is?
Ghost Man?
Yeah.
Does Ghost Man, can he type in his real name?
He could if he wanted to. I don't know if he just took that for a
like your private chat to Henry or CC to let.
Oh yeah, the other question in chat was if you've ever run into a vibration that was so dark it made you physically ill, and whether it was a living person or a dead person or a spirit.
Yes, living and dead, absolutely, and physically ill, absolutely. Without question. Throwing up, vomiting, headaches, nausea. I've been punched. I've had the wind knocked out of me. I mean, yeah, I've definitely, and again, it's those negative experiences that negate the protection that, I mean, I'm very eclectic in my protection. I mean, I do all kinds of crazy things. I carry crystals. I carry salt water. I mean, whatever. Anything I can carry with me that might be helpful. I mean, my bag's full. So it's, but I think that, spirit guides and the power of intent are the two most practical and important things that anybody can take with them. And I think if you go to a haunted location, I can't express it enough. Do not provoke. Please do not provoke. You might get a reaction, but you might not like the reaction you get.
Yes. Yeah. No, I've never.
If you go with respect, you're going to get.
That's the way I always go, is with respect. I treat them just like they used to be alive, and I only ask for nice things. And I've never had any real negative things happen to me, thank God. And that's why I don't mind doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Now you
Well, you know,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that, you know, when I've had negative things happen, it's usually my own fault. I mean, I could see where it was my doing, not because I did anything, you know, provoking necessarily, but I may have like not included my guides, or I, like in the case with the cemetery when my body was overtaken, I was there the night before and my guides told me to stay by the tree. The closer I got to the tree by the entrance, the better I felt. The further into the cemetery I went, the higher my anxiety went. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to push myself, right? Face your fear, right? So even though I'm feeling this anxiety, I'm going to go ahead and push myself and go into this cemetery and follow the rest of the group. And then I physically felt somebody pushing on my chest. And it wasn't like a heavy thrust or anything. It was more like a friend telling you, no, come on, stay back. You don't want to get in there. You know, it was a loving, cautious pushback, but I could feel it and I counted it. I counted how many times it happened. It happened exactly 9 times and then it stopped. And it was interesting to me that, and I knew it was my guides. I knew my guides were, that's where you got to learn to respect your guides too. You got to respect the answers they give you, even if you don't like them. And my guide was telling me, no, there's trouble in here. You don't want to be here. You know, stay back. Don't go in. And I didn't want to like be, you know, a scaredy cat. I mean, I'm not afraid. I want to face any fears or anxiety. You know, we can do this. We're going to be okay. And no, we weren't okay. You know, we weren't okay at all. We lost our faculties, for crying out loud. So, you know, you really gotta trust your instincts, right, and listen to your guides. So it's when I haven't listened that I've run into trouble. You know, it's not something that you can be real careless with, because not all ghosts are friendly. You know, there's some negative things out there, and if you don't know what you're getting into, you can get hurt. And you might be lucky, and it might just simply be a scratch, but it could be a lot worse. You know, I've heard horror stories of how people get attachments, and it affects their lives for long term, months, years down the road.
Wow.
You know,
now,
so
Ghost Man in the chat room said his name's Tom.
Yeah. Tom is the one that has a little boy jump on his back.
Oh, okay.
That I mentioned earlier. Yeah, he's been on. Yeah, he's seen quite a bit.
Yeah, he said the Abbey and said he was the horse.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He was given rides.
Now I know you said before that sometimes before you would go to places, some of the spirits might visit you and say anything. Did you get anything before doing the show tonight?
No, actually I didn't. I can't say that I wasn't full of the mundane prior to the show tonight, though, to be fair. Had I just been home and been able to meditate or do something like that, maybe perhaps something would have come through, but I was kind of wrapped up in our mundane world with a lot of other people around me, so
right.
I didn't really get a chance to do that. I did, however, definitely get interrupted by spirits, so I hope that somewhere along the line there that someone received the message that they were intended to hear, because it can be quite silly to me, you know, when spirit comes through like that. Mm-hmm. I had one time I was doing a paranormal speech, and my great-grandmother came in and stood behind me. And this is a woman that I have a lot of love and respect for. And she came up behind me, put her hands on my shoulders, and she said, "I'm so proud of you." So while I'm standing up on this stage, you know, talking to all these people, trying to be all professional, all of a sudden I just busted out in these emotional tears. They're just falling down like rain. And I'm like, "I'm sorry, my grandma's here." So, I mean, you know, And it was, it was like kind of like going to, like one of those dreams that you have and you're in school with no clothes on or something. It was so embarrassing at the time, but at the same time, it was such a welcome gift, It was like, Grandma, you picked the wrong time, but thank you.
Wow. Well, we're down to
So
about,
yeah, you never know.
we're down to just about 12 minutes before we have to start wrapping up. Barbara, you got questions still? Is she still with me?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Yeah, you mentioned that sometimes that you meditate ahead of time, and I'm wondering, when you go on investigations, do you want information about the place prior to your being there, or do you prefer going in without any preconceived notions or history of the place?
That's never really mattered to me, one way or the other. I mean, I guess for when you're investigating with a group of people, it's always fun not to have the information if you feel like you need the validation or they need the validation, that you can go in and then be right. But to me, that's just kind of an ego thing, and I really don't feed on it. So it doesn't matter to me whether I know something or not. I've gone to places that I know are haunted and not gotten anything. And we'll be walking through, you getting anything, Gypsy? You getting anything? I'm like, no, nobody's home. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. And that happens. I mean, not every haunted location is active 24/7. You're not always going to be able to contact. You're not always going to be able to communicate. And, I either get something or I don't. And it really has nothing to do with, for me anyways, it doesn't have anything to do with the history on the place. It either happens or it doesn't happen. And I don't control that. They do. So that's why I say it doesn't matter if it's day or night. It either happens or it doesn't. And fortunately, I mean, for me, more times than not, something happens. But I think it's because I go in with respect and love, and I get good results because of my, my approach to it. But not always. I mean, the Abbey out in Colorado is a very haunted location. That's another day or night place. And I've walked through there and not felt a thing. Doesn't mean that it's not haunted. It just means there's no activity at this time,
right. You can go to a place one time, not get anything. You go again, and you might get stuff. They're there and they talk on their time, not just because you're. That's
right.
They're trying to get something.
Right. Yeah. They don't always do command performances.
Right. Right.
Have you ever gone to a place where you just walked to the front door and said, no, I'm not going in there?
Yes, absolutely. And that is, that doesn't happen very often. But it's again, when my guides are only going to tell me there's negativity if it's a problem. They're not going to tell me if, like Waverly Hills, for example. We know there's negativity there. We know it exists. My guides didn't tell me that I shouldn't go in because the negativity that was there didn't pose a threat. If it doesn't pose a threat to me, then I don't have to worry about it and I can go ahead and proceed. But occasionally they're like, there's a threat, you shouldn't be there. Don't do it. Like the cemetery that I went to, there was a threat there. And I had no business not listening, and I ended up in trouble because of it. So those experiences that I've had along the way and working closely with my guides has really taught me a lot about listening to them. Because when I don't, I end up in trouble, and I'm not looking for trouble. So, yeah, if I come across a place that, they say no, it's no. And I've traveled 5, 6, 7 hours by car to get a no, and had to accept that no, for my own safety. I'm like, I'm sorry, but they won't let me go in. I can sit outside, but it's not very often. Not very often.
Are these residential areas or are they public areas?
Both.
Both. Oh.
Both. Mhm. Yep.
Well,
Absolutely both.
It's hard to imagine that any residential area would be that negative, but I guess there are several.
There are. They're out there, yeah.
Do you think the negativity is human-based or living-based,
No.
or is it mostly...
No.
Okay.
Not that I've encountered. I don't mind talking to a grumpy old man who's mad because he's got these people living in his house. I mean, I can deal with that all day long. I kind of like grumpy old men, to be honest with you. I worked in a nursing home. I mean, they were all grumpy old men. I loved them, you know. I mean, I'm not going to lie. They loved me, you know. We got along just fine. But, no, the human ones I don't have any, I've never had any issues with. It's the non-human entities, and they're out there. And I lived actually at the base of an Indian burial mound for about 8 years. And I had a lot of experiences in that place that gave me a very healthy respect for demonic activity. And it's not something I wish to encounter. It's not something that I necessarily fear. It's just not something I wish to encounter at this point in time in my life. And I'll put it out there like that, because there may come a day where I'm willing to go up against them, but right now it is not that time. But the Native Americans used to actually use these entities to protect their sacred lands, to protect their burial mounds. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's kind of a yin and yang thing. And they most definitely exist. They have their place, and yeah, I mean, like I said, the one that I dealt with in my own home for 8 years tore apart my family, made my son struggle with things no one should ever have to deal with. I should really write a book. So yeah, and because of that experience that I had, is why I listen now. You know, if there's something of a threat, I don't want an attachment. I don't want to deal with that right now. I mean, I'm good.
Oh yeah. Well, I was thinking that, you know, Colorado, northern Utah is where Skinwalker Ranch is, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of very negative type of spirit.
Absolutely. They got a series out now too. I'm all over that. I got that recording. I haven't started watching it yet, but I'm recording it. And that's another thing. See, that's where that crossover kicks in, because you have paranormal activity that is you know, like with the ghosts and the people that, you know, have been incarnated. And for me, I mean, I love that stuff. That's great. These are people I can relate to that. You know, but something with like 3 legs and 2 heads is just not in my game. And I think that there's a lot of crossover. You know, whether it's aliens or interdimensional creatures, or, you know, I don't know what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch, but there's a lot happening out there. And I'm not in a hurry to get there, but I'll watch the show.
I often wonder what would happen if a psychic had visited there, because I don't think they've had one yet up there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
Or why it's only limited to that ranch.
Well, you know, I mean, I think, like I said, personally, I think that there's more going on there than meets the eye. I think it's more than just ghosts. It very well could be interdimensional. It could be alien. There's obviously a lot of Native American things happening. I mean, I think it's like paranormal soup. You know, I don't think it's just one thing going on. I think it's a plethora of things going on. And somebody should probably check. I mean, are there like ley lines going through that property?
No idea.
Yeah, you know, because, I mean, you know, you look at, like, you know, these energy spots on the planet, and sometimes they're just attracted to where those ley lines intersect. You know, so, I mean, it could be that. I know in this area in particular, you know, like my house has underground rivers going underneath my house. I didn't know that when I bought the house, but I found out. There's springs going down the hillside here, and my neighbors, when they built that house, they had to put in, what do they call it, the rocks and stuff all the way around.
Right.
To drain the water. And, they say they're attracted to the water, too, the rivers and stuff, because it's like a conduit. So, there's a lot of things in nature that can provoke these experiences as well. So who knows what's going on that ranch? Should we go, Barb? Should we go down there and check it out?
Yeah, definitely.
You want to? You want to go?
We-
Yeah. Really?
I don't think they'll let us on.
Probably have a better chance getting on that than we would Area 51.
Yeah.
Hey, two little old ladies like us, we just got lost. We're sorry.
Oh. All right. Well, we're down to like 4 minutes. Jeff, did you have any question or anything?
I did want to point out one thing just before we went on the air. Barbara, you said that Pluto's in retrograde. What would that imply for us to know?
That the energy for as far as things getting more intense are going to start to squeeze a little bit more. So anytime you have, yeah, that's my neighbors next door.
Okay, just making sure.
So when you have Pluto going forward, it's kind of moseying through Capricorn, so Earth signs are going to be in a little bit better shape. But then it's starting to go stationary, and now it's going to go retrograde, which means it's going to start again. People are going to start feeling a little bit more squeezed, a little bit more confined.
We're not feeling that way at all right now.
No.
So there you go.
So the pressure is going to be a little bit more. Isn't that lovely?
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How long is that going to last?
Till October.
Maybe
It'll be a while.
Maybe something else will come by though, and kind of like.
Oh no, this is gonna
It won't
rear its little ugly head until next year sometime.
Wow.
Hopefully we'll start opening stuff back up in June at least, because I'm hearing May is going to be gone.
All right, we got 2 minutes. Gypsy, I want you to go ahead and give out all your information where people can contact you, follow you, and all the good stuff.
Well, I actually say, just look me up on Facebook. You can find all kinds of links to my website at gypsymoonmagic.com there. But Facebook's a great place to get a hold of me, to follow me. And you can certainly message me. My inbox gets a little overwhelmed, but I try to get into it and get around to it all. So if you have any paranormal questions or thoughts or concerns that you'd like to discuss, Facebook's definitely a great place to do that.
All right. Let's see. Okay, we're down to just a couple of minutes. Next week I'm working on like a special guest show. It may or may not happen, so we'll just have to wait and see who we have next week. So Gypsy, I want you to stay on till we're off, and we'll talk with you for a minute after that.
Sure.
And so, Barbara, you guys, Jeff, got anything before we start the countdown?
Yep. Happy Beltane in a week.
Yeah. And everybody take care of yourselves. Mind what you're doing. Wash your hands. Keep social distancing. It's working.
It's working, huh? All right. With that, we're going to run now. So this is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
And Barbara Duncan.
And we will see you next week at the same time. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal View.